also. Good morning, all. Thank you to the host. Thank you to the organizers and those distinguished panel members that have come before me. I want to say, I won't take any time in going over my background. The host has done that in a way that has made me proud, and I appreciate it. I will just jump right into things from the start. When we talk about police reform, whether it's in the United States or any other country, first must look at one important view.
Go ahead, sir.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead, sir. Sorry for the break. Go ahead. You have the floor, sir.
Not a problem at all. First, want to restart by saying police reform, whether it's in the United States or in any other country, we must first look at what the government's view is as a whole in dealing with police reform. Because if that government, whether it's a dictatorship or a democracy, plays a vital part in how we look, how we view, and how we attack this issue. A dictatorship also can be in a democracy. We in the United States, and I'm using the United States as a model, we are quasi, what you could say, supposedly democracy. But in certain areas, certain states, certain jurisdictions, they have dictatorships, which and many times need to be broken and reestablished in a way that reflects all people's views. One issue that has come up during these times is about defunding the police or defunding law enforcement. I first ask why. That's a vital point. You must know why you're trying to do something before you do it. The why is very important in the sense of, if you do this, what is the reverberation throughout the community and the country at large? I look at defunding the police in a way of saying, if you defund a certain situation, and let's take law enforcement off the table. Let's look at medicine. If one doctor gives a wrong diagnosis or commits malpractice against one, do we defund all of medicine? We should not defund all of medicine. We should attack and improve the issue we have with the one or many doctors, or in my case, law enforcement, that are creating this issue. So first, let's look at that. When you also defund the agency, you have to remember, there's good and bad to everything. So if you defund, you're not just allegedly hurting those officers who are not doing their job properly and serving and protecting everybody. You're hurting those who do the right thing every day, those officers who believe in serving and protect. Each and every day they put their uniform on. So first, again, let's ask the question, why to defund? I would say you're better off your reallocation of funds. When I say reallocation of funds, I mean vote. Voting is the best way to reallocate any resources to better benefit the total good of all who they serve. If we don't get out here and vote, you would have the same corruption, the same mismanagement, the same arrogance, and the same disregard to human life that you see each and every day on the news, and in your own personal lives, it will continue. That's why the vote is so important. Those who are in power, if they're not doing the right thing for the community, you need to get them out of power. And the fastest way to get them out of power is the vote. Your local law enforcement are dictated by those who are in charge, whether it's governor, county exec, mayor, who have it. Those are the ones who are ultimately in charge and oversee everything. But it's up to us to make sure that we do our part in having a voice in who serves and protects us. Another point I would like to bring up is law enforcement officers, which I served and protect for over 30 years as a part of that great fraternity. Any law enforcement, the first thing you should be asking them, who are you serving? Are you serving yourself or are you serving the public? See, when a person goes for a job, a lot of times they're serving themselves, not in a way that's contrary to anything, but you're serving yourself to be able to eat, fend for yourself. In law enforcement, it's totally different, in my opinion. It's not the same type of job where you're just serving yourself, because you take an oath to serve and protect everyone, no matter what race, creed, or color, or orientation they are. Your oath is to serve everyone. And when you stop serving everyone, you're no longer, in my opinion, a law enforcement officer. You're not what is supposed to be representation of why you were hired and why you put on that badge and represent your community. The officer who ultimately is entrusted to serve and protect the community must feel a partnership with that community it serves, or he serves and protect. And when I say partnership, you can't serve and protect somebody you don't know about. You can't serve and protect anyone you don't feel a kinship with or have some type of interaction with. You can't serve and protect in a car and not speak to the community. You can't serve and protect walking down the street and not engaging young people each and every day you're on this job. If you're not engaging someone in your community in law enforcement as an officer, you're doing a disservice to your agency. Because it's one of the fundamental things about being a law enforcement officer. You have the ability to talk to everyone and anyone at any given time. And your interactions dictate how they perceive you and how you also perceive them. So I always tell young cadets, officers under my command, I said, I asked them, what is your greatest weapon in dealing with the public? A lot of them will say, oh, my mace, my gun, my baton. And I look at them and say, no, your greatest weapon in dealing with the public is your mouth. The words that come out your mouth can cut or they can heal. They can soothe. They can also bring justice. They can also bring comfort. So if a law enforcement officer does not use the most important tool in his or her vocabulary as far as arsenal, then they shouldn't be in law enforcement. I would also say that in order to better serve our community each and every day, the training of law enforcement officers must be done in a way that they understand that service and protection of those in their community is the utmost. Serve and protect. That's the first thing that you say in your oath, to serve and protect your community. As a law enforcement officer, that should be first and foremost each and every day you put that uniform on. It should be on the forethought of your mind when you engage those you serve and protect. You can't choose when and where to serve and protect. That should be 24/7, 7 days a week. That is not the officer's right not to serve. No, you took an oath to serve. And that is something that I just can't express how deeply I feel about that. I did not serve almost 30 years in my agency to not serve and protect. Those who come before me, those who could not read and write, those who were killed for even thinking about trying to read or write, that's who I serve and protect. That's why I'm here today. So in law enforcement, we have to continue those fights of those who are not here, who cannot protect themselves. The reason why you put that uniform on is to protect those and is to serve those who cannot do for themselves in those situations. And I'll say this in closing, law enforcement has to evolve. Law enforcement must evolve. And with the community's help, and with everybody standing in unison of making things better, it will evolve. And with saying that, I thank you for my time, and I'll take any questions regarding this topic. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lieutenant Colonel Terry, for that wonderful summarization of what police reform should be. And I love how you started by saying police reform is not only a thing for the advanced nation, it should be a thing for every caliber of government, whether you are a dictator, whether you're a democracy. But that what is more important about police reform is you look at what the authority or the operating government are defining as police reform, so that you as the electorate can elect people or can create the change that is required so that they better understand what it means to be involved. And I like the way you are able to explain that communicating content of what police reform needs to be is equally as important. When you distinguish between defunding and reallocating, and you stress that reallocating is a better attribute or a better adjective or adverb for that context, because you are concentrating resources now in making sure policing is done at the community level. And there can never be a good policing system if you don't have trust from what you said. And the individual entity, you as a person and your family, must begin to have moral and ethical values, if at all we intend to ensure a better policing system. I have some few questions that have been sent to me via the YouTube platform that you can address. I don't know if you're ready, sir. Let me go ahead. You still have like 4 minutes. If you have any questions you want to ask Lieutenant Terry, I think we should ask. And this topic is a very important topic because back home in my country, we're having problems with police reforms. And his explanation on how to source for adequate trust amongst the community seems to be a defining term across board. The question I have for you from my side before we take from the floor is this. Please ask, thank you, moderator, for the summary. Please ask Lieutenant Colonel Terry, what happens if the government of the day still refuses, even when we have elected our representative? What can we do? I think the question is, we've done all we need to do. We've elected our representative, yet we are not still able to get the dividend of adequate policing that is unbiased. What should be our next line of action? Over to you, sir.
That's an excellent question, because that happens a lot of the time. That you go down that road, you do what is right in trying to create that change, and you look forward to that change, and that change does not happen because a lot of times the people that we put or think we put into that change does not enlist that change. It's still going to be up to us. We can never stop fighting for change. Even when we find out we're not being represented in the fashion that we thought we were going to be by our vote or by our say in the change, we must continue to elicit that change regardless of if that change is occurring slowly or tremendously. Never lose sight. The fight is never ending. So in response to that question, I would say it's very frustrating when you're up against those situations, but the last thing we should never, ever do is stop fighting, stop wanting change. The enemy always will put obstacles in front of you. And the reason why they put obstacles in front of you, because they want you to stop fighting. They want you to be frustrated with what is going on. And the only way you can stop that is to continue to fight. Because if they see you continue to fight, they're going to get tired and stop resisting the fight. Sometimes change may take a day. Sometimes change may take a year. Sometimes change may take 50 years. But the main thing is we have to keep fighting for these changes. And don't let one situation dictate your outcome or our total outcome. And I hope I've answered that question.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. I think you have made it clear that do not despair, do not be frustrated, explore all the peaceful available opportunity to continue to insist. The idea is to maintain, to sustain, and continue to insist against all. Do you have another question, sir? Is there anyone on the floor that has a question before I ask him the next question? We have just about 2 minutes before I introduce the next person.
Yeah, I have a question. Yes.
Okay. Sorry, LT Colonel. Let's allow Lieutenant Colonel Roland. Let's allow Udeme to ask a question. Udeme, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm from the movement for New Nigeria. We're trying to see how we can change the narrative in the political landscape here. So, Terry, my question is, in climes where votes don't count, as evident in some African countries, what can citizens supply to check leadership excesses? Because the fact is, security agencies, law enforcement officers take orders from their leaders. So how do citizens check their leaders' excesses? Because in some of the African countries, for example, Nigeria, where I come from, votes don't count in the elections.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay. In countries where there is more dictatorship than democracy and your vote does not count, it is very difficult. I wouldn't sit up here and tell you that it's not. It is very difficult. But the bottom line is, even in those areas, uniting everyone for a common goal, no matter the obstacle, is still the only way.
Yeah.
We can't escape that. No. We have to stay course. You know, as things go on, the only way to change them is to stay the course. If we don't stay the course, even though how difficult it is, those things will never change. You look over 200-something years of what this country has gone through, change was slow. South Africa, change was slow. You went from a dictatorship to where a person felt because the rise of a voice kept coming. It kept coming. It was never extinguished. And as long as we understand, if we don't let anybody extinguish our voice, sooner or later that voice will be heard. And the more people that you get together to hear that voice, the louder you will be. And we're talking not just from your country, but from other countries. And see, that's the key. When everyone bands together for the cause, you know, it's simple when you isolate a group. What they say, conquer and divide. The thing is, we cannot be divided in this. We must all come together, no matter what country you're from, come together as one to help voice those impressions and look at it from what your vantage are. What can I do to help? And everybody can help. So it's difficult, very difficult. I would never say it's not, but continue to unify and continue amongst the tyranny.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. And to Deme, just like he said, it's the principle of commonality. You must ensure people are still bounded together, even against odds. Even at some point, dictators fear when people become united, because that's where the problem is. So they try so hard to split. So the teaching is this: continue to insist on those good things. Continue to insist that your rights be respected. Sir, the final question before we call it a day. Thank you, moderator, for this present. I really like what Lieutenant Colonel Ronald is saying, but I want him to speak to an idea people are raising. Shouldn't there be a global council on police matter, just like we have in the United Nations, where police matters across board can be done, and the rules given to countries to domesticate in their place? Should political parties, what is your view on political parties teaching their candidates they put forward, whether the president, governor, or the local leaders, on what policing modalities they entail? And what do you think we should be doing in training our officers, as you insist that there needs to be an evolution? I think it's a lot of question. He says you insist there needs to be a lot of evolution. Everybody needs to elevate his mindset, and there should be complete change from what we used to do. What is your position on training officers to evolve? Then on political parties, when they bring their candidates for in any of the political parties across board, whether Nigeria, whether Mali, whether Kenya, should we not have those candidates telling us what their concept of policing information is? Then finally, policing reform requires commitment on every place. Why shouldn't we have a council or a general body, just like the UN, that can draw down what standard universal policing should be, and then people now domesticate it there, and people can bring their case there? I think these are the three questions, then we'll call it a day, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, then. Thank you so much for the question. I'll take the first part. A universal council to address police reform or police matters throughout the world. It is a great idea. I would support it. The only issue you have is, will you get the support from the other nations?
Oh, yeah, that's the problem.
Come together. And when you're bringing something like that to the table, egos must be put to the side. Everybody's egos must be put to the side, and the ideas should take front and center. I would welcome if that was the case, because then you can bring all nations together. They can talk about the different avenues of policing, which in some smaller groups and venues, they do have that interaction. I know I've been a part of them, some intercontinental focus groups on policing from abroad to the United States. But if you had everybody with their ideas come together and sitting there, and a way to enforce that, see, that's most importantly. We would have to find a mechanism of how you would enforce it. Being able to talk about it and being able to put those ideas together is one thing. But what will be the enforcement mechanism to trigger that? If there was an incident of unjust and unruly police enforcement in a certain country, what will be the mechanism to address it? And I would say right now, I don't think that would happen because countries don't want other countries interfering with how they rule. Because then you might consider the United States invading another country because of police reform. How would that look? So you would have to have something put together to where there was an understanding, a type of accord that a treaty is made to address those issues and allow countries to intervene on one another's behalf to address those issues. As far as the second question, absolutely right. Your candidates should articulate their positions on police reform and how they see policing. There's no ifs, ands, buts about it.
Yeah.
Because why are they running? Why do they want that position? They're your public servant. So they should be able to articulate why they want to serve you. That's first of all. The reason why you're running is not to serve self, but to serve others. So again, make sure that you ask those questions. And if they don't want to answer them, then you know that's not the person for the job. On the last question, dealing with training to be specific, and I will look at this, all training can't fit every group. You have to look in certain areas and adapt how people are and adjust your training to those demographics. You can have how you treat people as the standard, but then engaging certain people because certain people have different cultures of how you can engage them. And certain religious groups, I just can't walk up to you and hug you or shake your hand. We have to be mindful of one another. That's why training has to be an evolution of learning about one another, brothers and sisters, learning about one another's community partners, willing to understand what makes us different, but also what brings us together. And in saying that, I hope I answered your question.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for all those that have given us questions. Thank you so much. We've come to the end as we introduce the next speaker. Please still hang around. If we still have extra time, we'll be able to attend to you. But you've been a blessing for a lot of people. Thank you so much.